Well, I'd like to first thank you, Weetzo, for having me here. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm meeting you all here tonight on the traditional lands of the Gadigal, Bidjigal and Birrabirragal clans, who traditionally lived on the Sydney coast where I live and work. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and extend this respect to all Aboriginal people living, working or visiting this area. Now, welcome, Rabbanit Judith. We're excited to interview you. Judith and I've had a few chats and had to stop ourselves from having the entire interview before seeing you. I want to start off, Judith, with your childhood. I think it's a good place to start. We've all had a childhood, and I'd love to know how religion and spirituality, and then even feminism, and we'll get to that probably later, but how they played out in your childhood and adolescence.
So it was interesting. I was looking at all the participants, the list of participants, and I see many people that featured in my childhood, members from the North Shore Synagogue and from Masada. So I think that those of you who knew me then may remember that I think there was always a love of learning, of Jewish learning in the house that I grew up in. And there was also a encouragement. There were two of us, me and my sisters. There was an encouragement of us as girls to really have our opinions and to express our opinions, and you know, to encourage that conversation. And we really did, and we had very robust discussions, you know, at the Shabbos table. And the other thing I think is that I was really, what was imbued in me was this sense that Judaism was my own, and that it was something that belonged to me and that I could really take the reins of and make my own. And I felt very, I think, connected, and I really felt that it was something that belonged to me. And I remember at one point on a Shabbos afternoon, my father was going to shul before the afternoon service on Shabbat, and the rabbi was running like a Talmud class beforehand. And it only kind of dawned on me now, and when I thought about it, and I remember like saying, "Oh, I'd like to come to that." And it was like, "Yes, of course you'll come to that, and you'll sit." You know, I think I was like a teenage girl amongst all these old men around the kichel and the herring at the Shabbat. But there was this sense of I could go and explore whatever I wanted to, and there was this real sense of ownership and of laying out Judaism for me there. And I think what it also did was it made me feel very comfortable in shul. I felt very comfortable in shul. I felt that shul was like a second home to me, and I think that that's something that I've wanted to also imbue in my children today.
And did you ever come across anything in Judaism that you struggled with from more of a feminist point of view?
Yes, I think when I was younger, not really. Like I didn't have a sense of exclusion or alienation. I really felt part of the service. I really felt connected, and I felt like I belonged, and I felt I didn't have that sense. I think the experience of feminism and my raising of consciousness about feminism came in a more positive way when I traveled to New York to the Jewish Alliance, Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance conference. That was in about 2000. I was a young married woman, and at that time, I guess I had started from university where I'd studied law and social work. So obviously the secular feminism, I was exposed to those ideas, and I was thinking about how do I integrate secular feminism with my Judaism. And I discovered at Jaffa all these other women, these thousands of women who were struggling with the same thing and thinking about those same issues. And so it was really more about how to integrate feminism and feminism principles into the Judaism that I practiced. I think that was my path towards.
And can you just tell for everyone that doesn't know what JOFA is, what JOFA is?
Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance. So I think before 2000, before I went there, I didn't know that there was such a thing as a Jewish Orthodox feminist. But I guess that conference opened up my eyes to the idea that there was a way of integrating both feminism and orthodoxy, of being committed to the halakha and of being committed, living a committed Jewish life, but also to live those principles of equality and that critique of power that feminism brings to the table.
And so can you take us through this sort of trajectory of how you've got into this point now? I mean, this didn't happen overnight, right? When did the first thought come in, oh, I could be a rabbi, an Orthodox Jewish female rabbi?
So, as I was saying, I was jumping between these two worlds, and in my graduation, just from Maharat now, I talked about that, about living in two worlds. And it probably started at university, and then even as I was working, I was very much involved in the Jewish world, and in a world where God infused every single action. The halakha has something to say about everything that you do. And at the same time, you know, working as a lawyer, studying at university, I was and fully engaging and reaping the benefits of all of that. I was living in a secular world, which by definition does not have a God in it. So I was constantly flitting between these two things. And as I said, I think that JOFA and that experience gave me this path where I could really integrate it. And then it's just been a journey of really trying to integrate it. So after JOFA, I became very involved with a women's tefillah group in Sydney. And we were involved in women's tefillah services, in Megillah reading, and I sort of followed, you know, the goings on of JOFA. And I was sort of happy in that space. I must say, when I went in 2000 to New York, the idea of a woman, Orthodox Jewish woman rabbi, was not on the table at all then, I think. And it really was, it was something that kind of just came. We went on a family holiday in 2017 to Disneyland, and I saw that JOFA, there was a JOFA conference on at the same time that we were on this holiday in New York, and I thought, I'm in America, I have to go. So, and there was the aha moment, or the click moment, because Blue Greenberg, who is considered the mother of Jewish Orthodox feminism, spoke and at a plenary session, and she talked about this book that, you know, it was her 80th birthday, and she talked about the book that she'd written on women and Judaism, and she talked about her sort of vision for the future and what she had thought at the time that she wrote that book, and that she thought that women being Orthodox rabbis was like a dream. And right after her was this very eloquent Orthodox Jewish women rabbi who spoke, and then they asked all the women in the audience to stand up, women who were studying for smicha, and there were about 20 or 30 women who stood up. And it was really then that I realized that there was something huge going on, and that I wanted to be part of that. And I had a friend who was studying at the time through Yeshivat Maharat, who I'd met. She'd come out to Australia, and I'd met her. And she kept nudging me and saying, come on, why don't you try? And I was very much, no, I can't, like, I'd love to, but I can't, I don't know. And then I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to apply. What's the worst that can happen? They'll say no. And I applied, and they said yes. And I think the fact that they said yes, that meant that I could do it, that there was an opportunity that was there for my taking. And I think, you know, drawing it back to my childhood, I think my parents really gave me that sense that you can do really whatever you set your mind to, whatever you want to do. And I thought, well, I've been landed with this opportunity. I'm just going to jump in and try. I have no idea. I have no plans for what I will do with it. I don't even know if I'll be able to hack the first week of studies, but I'm going to give it a go, and I'm going to jump in because I want to be part of this bigger movement in history.
So what is it about that draws you to it? Is it a personal challenge, is it the highest religious thing that you can do? Like, what is it that says to you, oh yes, I want this for me?
Well, I think it was that access to the learning, access to that really high level of learning, and access and exposure to these phenomenal women, and the ability to engage in dialogue with them and to learn from them. I think that was really something that was very, that really was I guess was something that was motivating and inspiring to connect to that. And that really, that ability to raise my skills up and to learn at that high level. And then, and this is what Blue Greenberg talked about in her book. And I guess it's about, really fulfilling that vision. Because what she said, when I was still a teenager and reading it, was that Jewish women needed to really engage and seek all the opportunities that they were, whether that was in prayer but most importantly in learning. And that the way to change is through engaging in a halachic dialogue at that highest level. And I guess that perhaps that spoke to the lawyer in me as well, because the idea of like, how do you bring about change? How do you improve the law, the world? You change the law, and you change the law from within, right, within the system. And so her point was really that women had to be able to engage in that dialogue within the system at that high level, and to be able to engage in that halachic dialogue. And so this was really the opportunity to lift me up so that I could engage in that halachic dialogue.
And did it at all feel like, some sort of divine intervention? There are people that are called to religious study, or did you have any of that?
Yes. So
there were a lot of yeses coming to you. Sorry? Because there were those yeses, I'll do the course.
Yeah.
Yes. They accepted me. Yes.
Yeah. So I know there's this idea in Judaism of hashgacha pratit, of like divine providence. And people also speak about calling. I don't know if I've ever really framed it in that way for myself, that all these kind of elements, coming together. I think for me it's more about, Hashem's given you gifts, and you've got to find how you can use them in this world to make the world a better place. And you've got to really pursue things that you've got to pursue your bliss. You've got to pursue those things that you think are important and meaningful in the world, and use those gifts to really contribute to society and contribute to the world. And so I guess I did see that this was a way of doing that.
And when you did the study, this was a 3-year, is that how long it took you to do this? And I know it was in New York and you were online and it was 5 a.m. starts. Was there any point where you thought, this isn't for me?
No, so I was just speaking to a friend this morning about it, because she was saying, how did you find the study, and how did you find like the energy to do this? And what sort of was the motivating factor? Because I'd thought previously, about doing maybe a master's, in relation to my field. And I always thought, I'm working, I've got kids, it's going to be too hard, I'm going to be exhausted. And when this opportunity came along, none of those thoughts kind of came into my head. It was just, there's the goal, I'm going for it. So there was definitely, I think the fact there was, and maybe it's because it was something that was really for my own personal growth, and it was something that was really meaningful to me. the other thing is, I think I never thought about that it's 3 years. I always just thought, what have I got to do today? Today I've got to wake up at 4:30 or 5 or whatever it is, and we'll worry about tomorrow, and we'll just see how we go. And I just really took each day as it came, and didn't sort of put pressure on myself either, that I sort of had to look at that end goal. Oh my God, I'm going to do this for 3 years. But really it was just about doing it each day. And one of my colleagues said this when she was talking about studying and balancing all these things, and how do you study and balance things. And she said that there are some things that are energy sapping, and there are some things that when you do, you actually get energy from. And I really think that I found that I would wake up, I mean, I'm still, this morning, they were very nice to me now. It's the summer program that we've got. So we're still going with lectures until the end of July. But after 3 years, they kind of worked out the Australian, Sydney, New York time. And they said, oh, okay, we'll put the class an hour later for you. So I have to, so it's 6 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock. Right. So but anyway, getting up at 6, like, at the end of that class, I'm like, I've got a spring in my step. I've got energy. It's energy producing. And so I think the fact that really studying gave me that energy to keep going as well.
And how have people reacted? Well, firstly, there's your family, your friends, there's your community, and then there's the bigger community. How did they react to, number one, you studying for this, doing the smicha, and the idea that you were going to be a rabbi, and now that you are a rabbi? Can you take us a bit through that?
So I think it was a journey for me, and I think a journey for all the people that sort of came along and found out about what I was doing as I was doing it. When I started doing the course, even when I got accepted, I remember feeling like my head was sort of spinning and turning, like even just to get in my head this idea of a Orthodox female rabbi, and that was what I was going to be doing. That just took a lot of processing for me, because it is a huge, I think, like, you've got to acknowledge the controversy of it and the change that there is with it. So it took me a while to really process that. And I didn't really tell anybody. I didn't tell my children for quite some time. And when I did tell people slowly as we were going, and I think what kind of encouraged me to tell more and more people about what I was doing was the response and the reaction that I got. And that was like a positive response. And one of the reactions that I got was from a woman who, when I said to her, I'm doing this course, I'm studying to be a rabbi, she said, you know, if I'd known that when I was younger, I might have stayed connected to Judaism. But I really felt that Judaism was just sexist, and I just discounted it, and I've left it, I haven't engaged. But if there'd been someone like you that I could have talked to, then maybe I would have stayed connected. And that really buoyed me also, I think, to tell more people and to really tell my story. And I also made sure to tell all the rabbis that I knew of what I was doing. And I've been really supported and encouraged by them as well, Orthodox rabbis.
Male rabbis.
Yeah, Orthodox male rabbis.
You'll have to say that from now on.
You know, telling them what I was doing and what I was studying. And I must say, I've really been supported by those. The response has been very supportive. And then I guess when I actually graduated, or like, again, I let people know that this was coming, and it was a very supportive, positive response. So I've been quite overwhelmed by the positive response and the sort of embrace that I feel from the community.
And so this is more of a practical question, which a lot of people, I had some questions come in, and a lot of them really are around what are you allowed to do as an Orthodox Jewish female rabbi, especially compared to what a male rabbi can do?
Yeah.
So can you sort of run us through a few things?
Yeah. So because I'm still sitting within the system of Jewish law and halacha, and I know what's interesting now that we've got COVID happening, there's maybe been a little bit of a shift, but to some degree for our community, there is the element of the communal life that revolves around a synagogue and around public prayer. As someone who is committed to halacha and to Jewish law, I can't do anything that I couldn't do before I had the smicha. So in an Orthodox prayer service, men and women sit separately, I'd sit separately. I can't go up and on the bima and read from the Torah and lead a service, a mixed service with men and women, because that's not done within Orthodox congregations, and so I wouldn't be doing that. But the things that a rabbi, that's sort of like one aspect, and quite a narrow aspect in terms of what a rabbi does. The other stuff is around pastoral care, visiting the sick, and teaching, and giving shiurim and lectures, and really connecting with people. So those elements I can definitely be involved with and do. The other place where I see the role is remember when I was talking about that, engaging in that halachic discourse and that halachic discussion. So what smicha essentially gives you is a recognition of a certain level of knowledge or learning. And so I can answer questions that people have, halachic questions, and I have a degree of halachic authority to say this is what the law is in this particular instance. So it's interesting because I sort of see what I would do, or my role as providing that access to the law, which is very similar to what I do in my secular day job. So I work at Legal Aid New South Wales, and Legal Aid is all about providing access to the law, access to legal services, access to justice for people who are socially and economically disadvantaged. And what I see that I kind of would be doing in the rabbi role is providing access to the law, access to Judaism, making it relevant, relatable, and being approachable, that people feel they can come and they can ask me questions and they can get that connection. So that's where I see the role of an Orthodox female rabbi. And
do you think we need Orthodox Jewish female rabbis?
Yes.
Need?
Yes.
And why do you think we need them?
I think because I think the response that I've had from the community shows that need. The response that I had when I was studying, and people said that will be fantastic to have that ability to go and talk to a woman about issues that you might not necessarily feel comfortable talking about to a man. But even not necessarily, relationship, domestic violence, all that kind of stuff, but even not that kind of stuff. And what's interesting is I've started to get questions, and the questions are not necessarily just pertaining to that. They can be about, they're about all sorts of things. And I think what I've seen is that need, is that people were very excited about this possibility and about having someone who they could ask questions to, they could approach. And that woman, like what I mentioned before, who said she totally disengaged, and that I could be this touch point for people to engage. I think particularly now, when in the world that we live in today, Judaism, if Judaism is going to survive and we're going to pass it on to our children and our children's children, it's going to have to be a Judaism that is relatable, and a Judaism that is accessible, and a Judaism that has empathy and compassion and integrity. And I think I can bring all those things to it. And I think the fact that there has been such an interest and an embracing. It's not just of me, it's of the bigger picture and this bigger idea of this need for women to be in these leadership positions.
And can anyone come to you? Can men come to you?
Sure.
Privately to discuss anything? It's fine. They can come about their relationships. They can come. It's all on the table.
Everything's on the table.
Okay. And what's we talked today about you visiting some schools, and I'd like to talk about that, but in relation to anything that might have surprised you about now being in this role that you might not have thought was going to be part of this life.
Well, I think I definitely thought after I'd done the exams that I'd be able to sort of just breathe out and maybe watch a movie or read a book. And I guess what's surprising is just how fast everything has moved. And, you know, that the questions and that are coming and the opportunities that there are to talk and to teach, I think that has been surprising, but also very encouraging and inspiring in a way. Things that I thought that are unexpected. I don't know, I guess with my children, maybe the unexpected benefits that I've seen from being a somewhat absent mother, I think have, there's been unexpected benefits from that. So seeing their mother studying and seeing what it means to study hard, that's good for my son who's about to go into next year 11, but also just to see a mother studying and seeing that in the middle of her life she can pick up and learn about Judaism, and that there's so much more to learn, and that I can learn and I learn with my kids. And so I think really seeing me up, doing those lectures in the morning and poring over the books on Shabbat and on the weekend, I think that the benefits of that, of having that role model and seeing that have been something that was unexpected. And
what's your relationship with the Beth Din? Is there a relationship there? Are you able to be part of the Beth Din? And I'm going to add this in, and we did sort of touch on it around a get.
So the rabbis that sit on the Beth Din is like the Jewish court here. Not any rabbi can sit on the Beth Din. So you have to have qualifications in what's called dayanut. So that's like another. So you could get your regular old smicha, which anyone can get.
Well, can they actually? That's another question of mine for later. But
no, that was very tongue-in-cheek.
I know, but obviously there's a certain level of religiosity to get smicha. Am I right?
Yeah, you have to have a committed. You'd have to be committed. Well, Orthodox smicha I can speak for. You have to be living an Orthodox lifestyle and be committed to Orthodox practice and. But so there's that level of qualification of smicha, but then to actually sit on a Beth Din that makes the decisions about conversions and divorce, issues of personal status, you need another qualification which is called dayanut, which involves studying a different section of the Jewish Code of Law, which is all about Jewish legal procedure, if you like. So I've only got the garden variety of smicha at the moment. So the topics that I covered were Shabbat, Kashrut, Avelut, which is like mourning, and Tarat HaMishpacha, which is like family purity. But there is this sort of other level. So and most of the rabbis in Sydney have that level of smicha and can't necessarily sit on the Beth Din either. So so that just explains the Beth Din. So no, I can't really sit on the Beth Din. And if I were to, just pull out, set up shop and say, right, here we go, I'm going to decide cases of Jewish divorce, there wouldn't be any credibility in terms of those decisions and my decisions. I think similar in secular law, you've got to sit within the system. You can't sit as your own judge. You've got to, you work within the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, the High Court, right? That's so it's a similar sort of system here. What they have in Melbourne are women who support other women who are going through approaching the Beth Din for a divorce. What they have in Israel is also something different. They have advocates, rabbinic advocates. In Israel also it's slightly different because there's no separation of church and state. So effectively these rabbinic advocates are like lawyers, like you'd have secular lawyers here in the family court, and they're essentially the lawyers in the Jewish family court in Israel. So that is sort of where the role would be. So I would like to explore the opportunities to work with the rabbis and work with the Beth Din around supporting women there.
Yeah, it seems like it'd be something a lawyer would be interested in. Now, can you perform marriages? All those kind of things, are that part of your?
Yes. So in America, there are women who are like in terms of like the roles that women are taking. I guess like in America, there's 34 of us now, I think, who have graduated. So the roles that women are taking in America, where Yeshivat HaMaharat is based, around being chaplains, being teachers, chaplains in hospitals, teachers, clergy, and there are some women who are leading congregations, who lead congregations, and I guess in those roles they would perform funerals and marriages. And if you look at the sort of technical halacha of it, and also like, and I say this sort of in parentheses because it's the halacha as I've understood it, and using the precedents that I want to pick. But there wouldn't necessarily be many barriers to performing a funeral. And in terms of performing a marriage, I've already read a ketubah at a wedding. And in terms of like what the rabbi's role is within a wedding, so it's a bit like an MC. It's not necessarily that you would have to say there are certain brachot that have to be said by men. So you could sort of work out ways of doing that. So there definitely are women in America who are doing that. And I guess it's a conversation I need to have with my rabbinic colleagues. And I think my approach really is to collaborate and to build consensus and to work together. That I found has served me very well until now, and that I guess is going to be my approach, is to really have a dialogue and to work it through with them.
So like in terms of running your own shul, because you can't get up in front of a mixed audience, you can't be a chazan or No,
but I mean, you could. I mean, I don't think I really want to necessarily. I mean, at this stage of my life, have a pulpit as such. But there's nothing to stop a shul from employing a woman to teach, to do pastoral work and that thing they do. I mean, rabbis today anyway, a lot of them don't lane necessarily. They're not reading from the Torah. And they're not leading the services. You have a cantor or a chazan who's doing that. And the rabbi is really the spiritual leader. So, and that is a model that in some shuls in America operates. That's, I guess, an opportunity that I could go down if I wanted to. But I think I'm sort of interested in building community and strengthening the communities that exist already for the minute. And really being a resource for the community and building that community in other ways for now, anyway.
And you did this through an American organization.
Yeah.
Is there something like that here, or something building like that here? How do you see this working in Australia in the future?
Well, there is another woman who is studying in Melbourne, who's studying with Yeshivat Maharat. So if anyone's interested in studying, you can contact me. I'll put you in touch.
So do you think this is an American idea? Is this something that Americans started? How do you look at it?
No, I don't see it like that at all. You know, there's also movement in this direction in Israel, and I think, if anything, I take my cue from the Rabbaniot, the women and the Torah scholars in Israel. So actually, just recently now, I think the High Court in Israel just issued a ruling that said that women were going to be able to, because of that lack of separation between church and state, there are rabbinic positions or rabbinic postings that the government has. And that the qualification to go for those government positions is that you need smicha. So the case was brought to say, well, that's discriminatory because there are women who are learned Torah scholars who don't have smicha and can't apply for those positions. So the ruling was that the Rabbanut needs to be able to set a test that women are going to be able to do in order to qualify to be able to take up those rabbinic positions. So I think this is I think it's more than just an American idea. I think this is a move. It's a worldwide movement, and it's a movement within Judaism. And it's like the natural order. If you give women, I mean, that's what happened in Australia, in America, in Israel. Women couldn't go to university and study law. I remember seeing that movie RBG and with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she said, like, you know, the interview for Harvard or wherever she was, they asked her, well, what do you think you're going to do with your degree? And I kind of see a little bit like that, like, you know, what are you possibly going to do? And she's like, I don't know, I just wanted to do it for my own personal benefit, and then we'll see where it goes. And then, I mean, look at her today. But I mean, the universities didn't let women in, and then they got access to studying the law. And as a result of that, they then became familiar with the law and became participants in the halachic dialogue. The same thing within Judaism today. And that this is sort of the seeds of this were sort of sowed in the 1980s as women got more and more access to higher levels of Jewish learning. What's going to happen when you give women access to knowledge? Knowledge is power. They get that knowledge and they're going to want to participate in the halachic discussion. And so as more and more women come through with that knowledge, I think then comes this push. And I think together with that comes a level of legitimacy and acceptance, because you see that the sky hasn't fallen in, and that women with halachic knowledge and with a high level of Jewish learning actually can be a good thing for the Jewish people. And I think that wave is slowly, you know, seeping across all continents. I don't think it's necessarily just an American idea. I think it's something much deeper there.
And do you feel like this is breaking with tradition? How do you understand that in terms of traditional Judaism?
So I was gonna say this one thing in terms of this movement of women's learning and of women's you know, the whole women's liberation movement and feminism. I don't want to paraphrase. I'm not putting words in the Lubavitcher Rebbe's mouth by any means, but the question was asked of him, particularly around women learning Talmud, because traditionally it wasn't a thing for women to learn Talmud, and that the Talmud, the Gemara, is really the key. That's like the Constitution we have in Australia and America. That's like the defining document. And then you have the decisions from the judges that come out of that Constitution, you know, interpretation of the Constitution. So giving women access to learning that Constitution, the Talmud, women didn't traditionally really until the 20th century have that access. But what he said was, women nowadays have access to PhDs, to being doctors, to being lawyers, to all this secular knowledge, high level of knowledge. If you don't give them access to this high level of knowledge in Judaism, you're going to lose them. And so really for the survival of the Jewish people, it's important for Jewish women to be learning at that high level. And that was, and that sort of was one of the drivers that sort of set the precedent for Jewish women's learning. But I think, so there is this sense of urgency, I think, around realizing that there is a need for change. But at the same time, I am very conscious, and I guess being within an Orthodox framework, I am very conscious of treading slowly. And I guess this is where also the legal bias comes through. If you look at the law and the way the law develops, with precedents, it's not just from A to Z. You go A, B, C, D. You go in small steps as each judgment is made and then distinguished on its facts and then changed and interpreted. The same thing, in Jewish law, and that's how Jewish law works as well. So it's a gradual process of change. And I think, this idea of women being, of having halachic authority, of being halachic decisors, being rabbis, is controversial. I don't think you can kind of hide from that. And I understand the controversy. I understand that reticence and the reluctance, because what's at stake here is the survival of the Jewish religion. And we've had 2,000 years where we've been able to successfully preserve and conserve the religion, and the tradition has been our strength. So when you come and you want to sort of tweak and play with the edges of tradition, that is scary. And I think that you do need to tread carefully there, because you pull one lever and you don't know where the others are going to go. So I do get that, and I appreciate that reticence there. I think there has been, from what I have seen now, my own personal experience, and I think with history on our side in terms of that increased access of Jewish women to Jewish learning and where that has led us. The access that Jewish women have had to tefillah, to leading women's tefillah services, where has that led us? It has led us to be stronger in our faith, in our practice, and in our commitment, and to pass that on to our children. And so I think that you have that precedent there as some kind of comfort, that Jewish Orthodox feminists are not here to tear down the walls and destroy the joint. They're here to build, and they're here to strengthen, and they're here to support, and they're here to make sure that there is a vibrant, relevant Judaism that can be carried on for our children and our children's children.
Fantastic. I'm just going to check. I've got a couple messages coming through, and I can see messages down the side. So there's one question that I also had come to me before. So I'm going to go to that, and then I'm going to come to this. One question was your relationship with other female rabbis in the progressive or Masorti communities. Is there a relationship? Are these people that you would sit with and discuss halakha? Tell us.
So that question came up for me. I did a talk at Limud Oz, and that question came up, and I was connected with some of, I think she's in the conservative movement or reform rabbi, woman rabbi, and so we've made contact, and we will make I think efforts to meet. Haven't met yet, but that's because more lack of just, I only have 24 hours in the day.
And there's a pandemic, so, take that as well.
Yeah. So, but look, I'm willing to talk to anybody and to hear the wisdom from anybody.
And you told me today, I just want you to share with everyone that you were at Winona. About what? Yeah,
so I had a few requests to come and talk at different schools. It was a Catholic girls' school, and then Winona. because the girls, because of this subject called Studies of Religion. And I was like quite surprised that as part of the curriculum for the Studies of Religion, these schools are teaching their kids about, one of the electives is Jewish feminism. And I had this Catholic teacher talking to me all about Joffa and Yeshivat Maharat and you know, all these women that I know of, and that was quite fascinating. And also like talking to these young women as well has been very interesting. So at Winona, I went and I was talking to them about Orthodox feminism. They were learning about Jewish feminism more broadly. And it was, I mean, what was interesting for me in terms of that experience was they approached it very sort of clinically, in a sense of, you know, looking at the critique of feminism of Judaism. And I found myself, you know, the biggest feminist going in terms of Judaism, defending Judaism, you know, and sort of explaining that, you know, on the face of it, you might sort of say, yes, women can't do certain things. There are defined gender roles, and therefore, you know, A plus B equals C, Judaism is sexist. But I feel it's really much more nuanced than that. And my personal experience of Judaism has not, and of being a committed Orthodox Jew, has not been one of feeling oppressed, has not been one of feeling, you know, of feeling that the religion is sexist in that sense. I think for me, my critique of the religion comes out of a place of love. So I think that you know, you can criticize your partner, or you can talk frankly to your partner, because they know that what you are suggesting that, you know, of their faults is really from a point of love, that you want them to, or your children, that you want them to be the best that they can be. And I think it's interesting to see, like, they were coming from it from a very theoretical perspective, I guess, as opposed to where I'm coming from it, from that experiential perspective, which I feel is a little bit more nuanced, and where like my critique is really coming out of love. The other thing I will just say about that idea of critique of Judaism and that experience of being an Orthodox feminist, and one of the things that really was, I think, invigorating, inspiring, like motivating, you asked me what motivated me to keep going, was the connections I made to the other women that I was learning with. And you know, in terms of the aha moments, when I went to Joffa in 2000 and I discovered that I wasn't the only person who thought this way about Judaism, who was, you know, committed, but at the same time had this feminist consciousness. And then I found my people, my peeps. I found all these people that thought like me. I had that kind of experience studying at Maharat as well, because we could sit in a room and we could look at the Gemara, we could look at Jewish texts, we could read them, we could apply a critical eye, but at the end of the day, we were all going to go home and keep Shabbos and keep kosher. We were all going to uphold the tradition, be committed to the, you know, to the integrity of that legal system. And that ability to have that frank discussion with people, with that critical eye, but still with that love, was something that was also very infectious. And I felt very blessed and lucky to be able to do that.
It seems, observing you in the last few questions, that it's also empowered you and probably made you love Judaism even more, because you've now got that level of authority and knowledge to be able to defend Judaism to someone outside, you know.
And I think what it's done is also given, I definitely am in awe of the halacha and the way that Jewish law has developed, and the flexibility, like from studying those nuances of Jewish law to see the way the system has been built so that it is dynamic, so that it can evolve, so that it can be flexible and take into consideration people's real life experiences. I think that has been a real privilege to learn how to do that and to see that in practice. And that has definitely, I think, strengthened and inspired me.
I think I've just lost your video.
Yeah.
Have you lost your video?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't start it.
Ooh.
Hello?
Okay, hang on. I'm going to start my video again. Okay, no, someone, I think Judy or Margot has to start my video again. That's okay, we can see you.
Okay.
Okay, we're back.
There we are, we're back. We're back.
We're back. Okay, I'm not sure how much longer we've got. I'm just scrolling through these messages. There's lots of different messages and questions rather. Sorry, questions. Has studying smicha changed the way you practice secular law?
So it's like, you know, you were talking about these moments of things colliding. I started in a job almost the same time that I started studying for smicha, in a job that really involved using what's called human-centered design. Human-centered design to solve social problems. And human-centered design is about, its central tenet is empathy. That in order to solve like these wicked social problems, what you do is you really immerse yourself in the experience of the people who's experiencing those problems. You ask questions and you then kind of come up with all sorts of different, together with the people who are experiencing these problems, you come up with different ideas of how to solve the problems, and then you test and you try and come to some resolution. And that process, we learnt about at Maharat as well, because there's a track that said Maharat, we did the law, the black letter law, but we also did a pastoral track, which looked at social issues like loss, grief, mourning, domestic violence, child abuse, mental health, all that. And then there was a track on leadership and innovation. And so I learnt about this design thinking and human-centered design and how you would apply that in a Jewish context at the same time as I was doing that in my secular job. So I think using those, it's funny how those two things did come together. And yeah, I'd say that the way that studying for smicha has had an impact on how I see, you know, working with those issues. And I think also how I see change within the organization and change around social problems and the way to sort of deal with change. Definitely through the smicha program and through the exposure to Maharat, that has influenced my understanding that I can then apply in my secular work.
Okay, there's a nice question here from Daphna. Has the process of smicha strengthened or changed your connection to or understanding of God?
No, I don't think so. For me, God is this still, quiet voice that's just always sitting here. And I've had that voice. I've always had that voice. I think the voice sometimes is like louder in the Beit Midrash, maybe in the like learning center. Sometimes it's louder, sometimes it's softer, but that's, I think, also like just dependent on maybe where you are in your life. There's a lovely story in the Talmud that talks about the rabbis are having this argument about, you know, whether or not a pot is impure or pure. So, you know, whatever the status of this pot. And they're having this really, really heated argument. And what happens is, like, the one rabbi that thinks that he's totally right and that the law should follow him, he calls for God to kind of, you know, be witness to his being right. And to some extent, God does that. Like this is the miracles. The river flows the other way. The trees uproot themselves. And then the rabbis kind of dismiss those miracles, and they say, Lo b'shamayim hi, the law isn't in heaven, it's with us to change and to evolve. And when I was at that Joffa conference and I saw those women speaking, and I had this sense that, yes, Lo b'shamayim hi, it's now in our hands. And the way that piece of Talmud concludes is it says, you know, these rabbis were having this huge argument. What was Hashem like doing? And it talks about one rabbi was walking on the way and he happened to meet Eliyahu HaNavi. Eliyahu HaNavi, Elijah the prophet, is often seen as the motif in the Talmud for sort of answering conflict. And Eliyahu says to this Rabbi Natan, he says he was sitting and laughing and saying, Nitzchuni banai. So he's laughing and looking at his children and saying, you've got me, boys, you've really got me. You know, it's over to you now. And I had this real sense at that conference that Hashem was sitting at the back of the Beit Midrash. He was at the back of that hall. He's at the back of the Beit Midrash at Yeshivat Maharat. Or when I'm, you know, studying, and he's saying, Nitzchuni bnotai, you've got me, my daughters. Over to you now. You continue it. So I guess that's how I see God.
Thank you.
I think that's a wonderful way to wind up our interview